Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are back on the forums, but we're actually not looking at the stuff which was passed to the developers. Instead, we're going to be focusing on one article which was actually made by Super Cacti. You may know Super Cacti from a bunch of other videos I've been doing, the Benelux videos. Him and Soldier have given us some great information when it comes to the vehicles and the tech trees, and it's been a hell of a lot of fun actually making those videos. And Super Cacti also has other suggestions generally on the forum as well, and one of them is to fundamentally change how the Naval Techtree in-game is set up. If you don't know, in War Thunder, the Naval Techtree is set up completely differently to everything else in the game. Everything else in the game works on this vertical setup, where you basically start from rank 1 with the very early, normally pre-World War II vehicles, and then end very much post-World War II, going into the 90s, a lot of the times when it comes with ground, and there is a general progression through the ranks of better vehicles and also more modern vehicles. In Naval, it's slightly different. Instead, it is more of a horizontal tech tree, and what this means is it's more designed around type of vehicle instead of actually around the progression of it. So that kind of comes down the line in the horizontal stuff, but it's much more about the type. So whereas in, let's say, air, you have bombers at different ranks, and then you have fighters at different ranks, and attackers at different ranks. When it comes to naval, you have all destroyers at rank 3. There is a few ones which are destroyer-esque, such as frigates, and also patrol ships, which are normally rank 2s, and then all rank 4, and also rank 5, light cruisers, heavy cruisers, and rank 1 and 2 is PT boats, and, stuff like that. So it's actually more designed around type instead of designed around overall progression, of the system. And what Super Cacti has put forward in the suggestion is the idea of changing it, so therefore it would mirror more of the ideas when it comes to, the other nations. And I think overall, I kind of agree with it, but I also have a few, issues with it. So I'll go through the issues right now. So one of the nice things about the Naval Techtree and how it's set up, if you want to get to higher tier vehicles, it's a hell of a lot quicker to do so in this new setup than it is, let's say, for ground or aviation. It pretty much means if you want to get to the larger vehicles, you can do it quicker than you can in any other game mode. But at the same time, it also means that you don't have full lineups, it also means that you don't get to experience different parts of the tech tree, and it also means that you have these weird areas where you have certain vehicles which are 220, 270,000 RP, and they're very similar to the vehicles you've seen before. Examples of this are the Chikugo for the Japanese, the Isuzu, or the Isuya, whatever it's called, the Isuzu even maybe. And then also stuff like the Fairmile at the end of rank 2 for the British, which is very similar to the one before it, but of course because it's at the end of the horizontal place, it is insanely expensive. So the system that Cacti is talking about is to be able to make all of the tech trees similar. And I think just from a general look point of view, just from a general, make sense point of view, and just so people get less confused, that's where I like the idea. Because one of the things that I've heard a lot of people get put off by Naval is the fact that the research on it is foreign to them, and they get a little bit confused by it. And I think a system like this would definitely help it out. Now, Cacti actually believes the issue here is Gaijin has done it because it allows them to make a full tech tree with only a few vehicles. For me, as I said, I think that could be correct, but I actually think the reason is to split it up by type, because the majority of naval vehicles are very much typecast, let's say. And he gives some examples when looking at the new setup he wants to create compared to the old. So this is pretty much how the old setup works right now. So it goes in a horizontal way. And then, of course, he has rank 6 and 7, always got to have progression, and this is his idea for a generic tech tree for naval. So instead of the horizontal, it is set up in the vertical, meaning that you will get a little bit of spice of life across the tiers, instead of being sat, not really being able to do anything until you get to certain BRs. Now, obviously, this means that certain research costs and certain stuff like that is going to have to change, but you can understand the general idea. It's to make it like every other tech tree in the game, and I think the experiment that they've done with naval is not a terrible idea. I think it's actually generally a good idea that they've been able to create this overall look of everything. I just really wish that when it came down to it, that it worked a little bit better than it did, and I think it can. I think the overall system is good. There are just a few things that are balked with the current system that need to change. And having a radical change like this, I'm not sure would fix them, but it may put a step in the right direction, because it would mean that certain vehicles, such as mine layers and minesweepers, and these rank 3 gunboats and corvettes, would not be insanely expensive to be able to research. So one of the major issues when it comes to naval and research is not particularly the research of the vehicles themselves. There are a few of them which really stand out as kind of crazy. The ones that I mentioned before, stuff like the Fairmile, which is no better than the machines that come before it, and it may even be worse. But the main problem, in my opinion, with naval is that you can either get, a heavy cruiser, one of the high-tier heavy cruisers, for 220 grand, or you can get a Chikugo for 270. It's really a no-brainer move when you think about what you want to play, because obviously, people want to become parts of the big ship community. The other thing to also think about is research. So total research of a vehicle is also linked to modification costs. So if you have a vehicle which is 270,000 RP to research, its modification costs are going to be way higher for that vehicle compared to one which is 100,000 RP total. So you end up in this situation where, once again, the example of the Chikugo, it has higher RP costs per modification and also total compared to the majority of cruisers out there. Now, that is a fault of the system. That is a problem of the overall system, because you don't feel more powerful, really, using the Chikugo compared to other machines which are around the place. And also, the progression angle kind of goes out the window when you get to that part of the tech tree, because you are trying to go upwards, or technically, down and horizontal, but it doesn't work too well. The other thing that Cacti also points out, which is a massive issue, that we're going to see in the future, and we're already seeing with certain nations such as the Soviets and the British, is if you have a look at the British destroyers right now, they just added in a bunch of new destroyers for Britain. They're all beautiful, they're all really fun to play. I've enjoyed all of them. I've actually researched all of them, apart from the last battle destroyer, because it's pretty much the same as the one above it, slightly different but very similar playstyle. But I've enjoyed the other ones that have been added. There's now 2 full rows of those destroyers for Britain, and it makes rank 3 look incredibly fat. If you look at the destroyer, if you look at the same area for the Soviets, if you look at rank 2, it is all over the place, because they're trying to fit in frigates, they're trying to fit in these patrol ships into rank 2, even though it would make more sense in a progression system like this, so you would be able to see them, next to each other on the side of destroyers and minesweepers, instead of forced into this one rank because of this whole problem with having to stick certain ships into certain ranks. And also, another thing is when we're seeing these ships getting added to the ranks, they don't seem to be reducing any of the previous research vehicles, research costs, which hopefully will come with time. That's definitely something, that would be nice to see. Now, anyway, let's talk about an example because of course, you know, what is this without a good example? Now, Cacti, being the incredibly optimistic person that he is, as you can see, he has added in a few more vehicles which are slightly more eccentric, I think would be the word, compared to what we have right now. So he's added in a submarine line, which would be lovely to see. Not sure how it would work too well, and also added a plethora of different nations, especially in the mining area of the tech tree. So pretty much what he's done, if you want a visual aid to help you, is he has split this tech tree instead of horizontal ranks in the form of types. Now it is just a general progression through the vehicles, which eventually end at top tier with stuff like the Grafspee, of course the Tirpitz and the Scharnhorst, but you can see general progression, and it just makes it so much easier to understand what is going on for the average player who maybe comes from aviation or comes from ground. You've got to understand that, at least from my point of view, ground and aviation are the two areas of the game which are played way more than naval, and that's just generally from looking at my personal queue times, also seeing how many of the same people that I run into over and over again, just looking at the queue numbers and everything like that, and also the general hype around the next update. I did this community poll on my actual YouTube channel, and it was amazing to me. A lot of people are looking forward to the new Swedish stuff, a lot of people are looking forward to the new aviation stuff, a few people are looking forward to the ground stuff. Hardly anybody is looking forward to the helicopters and naval. And maybe that's just because of the demographics of my channel, but it does mean, at least from my point of view, from all of the statistics that I see, there has to be something done to try and reinvigorate people's interest in naval, and maybe this is the way to do it. So instead of having to grind through a ton of PT boats to get to, you know, something that you would like to play, such as the battle barges, or maybe instead of having to grind through a specific type of vehicle to get the next type of vehicle, so instead of having to go through the sub-chasers to get to the destroyers, maybe there's a different way of doing it. And I think this definitely simulates one of those ways. I hope Naval gets the research revamp that it needs. As I said, the main thing I would like to see is a reduction in a lot of modifications across the board, and also, you know how ground got parts and FPE reduced? For some reason, Naval doesn't have that. That would also be something lovely to see. Anyway, just a quick suggestion video. I thought it was pertinent to do this because of the fact that Super Cacti has done such a good job at showing this off. If you want to see it yourself, make sure to check out the description so you can have a look there. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I just want to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Martinez, Super Cacti, Trigger Hippie, Eugene's Terry, and also Elove Goat and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.